So, hey everyone, it's so great to see so many of you here. My name is Georgios Diamantopoulos. You don't have to pronounce it, you can just call me Georgios. I'm the founder of Zero to MVP. I'm not here to talk about that, but we build basically software for startups. I know this was going to be a large room, and I made a Q&A with Slido. If you guys want to join, you can post your questions as we go along. And on the way here, I had this conversation multiple times. So if you're wondering if we're going to speak about standing desks, they are in the presentation, but they're not the sole focus, and I'll explain why. But thank you all for being here, really, because this is such a weird topic to speak at a tech conference, right? It's not Spring Boot, it's not Quarkus, and I'm a .NET guy, by the way. And it's not AI either, but I think it's more important because it's like something we all experience and we don't talk about at all. The kind of impact that we have, that it has, our job has to our bodies. To clarify, I am an engineer. I do write code. I'm not a personal trainer or something that came here to preach on you. Though I'm not a doctor, so this is all my personal experience and research, and please do your own. How I got here is that before COVID, I was like that guy over there. I think it's a guy. Who was, working out a lot. I did a lot of yoga, a lot of weights, different things. I was actually training and got certified in a couple of fitness systems. And then COVID came and I stopped working out completely. Our company was just starting out and we were worried about our, what would happen with COVID. And we got on, way more clients than we could deal with. And I just, kept working all day and night. And then 3 months later, I got up from my desk and went to train like I was training from before, and I hurt my knee like an idiot. And so I kind of ended up like the guy to the right. And of course, I gained weight, which made the knee problem worse. And yeah, I'm still recovering through that, a couple of years later. And through the conversations I had about that situation, I realized that a lot of people have similar problems, and I came and see if I can make a positive impact. I don't know if you guys have heard this. Anybody has heard? Oh, you just sit all day? Yeah, you're not doing anything. You just sit all day. You're not like that guy, carrying heavy things all day. But the actual reality is that sitting down in any position is actually puts a lot more pressure on the spine, on the discs, on the spine, than if you're doing the same thing standing. And that's what that shows. So I had this gut feeling that, we can't be all sitting and have healthy spines. Surely that's getting worse. And I did a search in, Scholar, and I found all this research that is actually proving that to be true, that our spines are degenerating faster, that we're getting a lot more problems than we used to, even in teenagers and kids, which is worrying to me. And I don't expect you guys to know anything about discs and spines and things. I actually attended a live dissection for 5 days, and that was mind-blowing in many ways that I don't think we're going to have time to talk about today. But here on the left, you can see the different stages of disc degeneration. So at the top, you have, my laser sucks, so I'm not going to try that. But at the top, you have a normal disc, and that acts as the material between the two bones to compress when you lift some weight or receive some pressure. And then when it starts degenerating, it means that the water content from that disc starts drying up, and that's the second from the top. Then when it starts bulging, that's the kind of terminology, it means that the that material starts going outside of that canal. And then when it's herniated, it means that the liquid is actually leaking out on the third from the bottom. When it, and then it's, it becomes thinner, so it's a thinning disc. And then at the bottom, you can see that the body is trying to protect the disc by growing more bone around it. So that's what the osteophytes are. And on the right, you can see what that actually looks like, if you dissect in that region. So at the top is the healthy one, and at the bottom is, a quite degenerated disc. And in a study not so far from here, in the Netherlands, in Rotterdam, they found that 73% of 9-year-olds have a bulging disc, at least on one level. So, that's, to me, is a pretty grim statistic. And they actually have a term for this position, the Game Boy back, they call it. And this is worrying because the last time we've seen those kinds of phenomena was 100 years ago when we had child labor in Europe. It's not getting any better for hip replacements either. And I have some pictures of what that looks like later. Not dissected, just diagram. So, but this is a while ago because 7 years in this day and age is a long time. But the data is from 2010 to 2017, and we're seeing in younger people, right, 35 to 44, there's a 14% increase in hip replacements. And I looked this up because I started hearing stories about people having hip replacements like in the 30s. So I wonder if there was any data. So at least this is my conclusion, that we are doing something wrong, and that our spine and joints are degenerating faster than what they used to in the past, and that we need to take some action. I'm sure you've all seen this or a similar type of diagram that tells you how to set up your desk and your screen so that you have a good posture. Have you guys? How many have seen this? Okay, how many have applied this? Okay, maybe half. So this is good. This is a good thing to do, but it's also good to understand the limitations of it. So if you do all this, the impact on your body will be less. But the real question is it enough for us to be healthy and mobile in the long term? And I think it's not. The first thing is that we have an illusion that there's a good posture and that the posture is something someone has, as in always, right? So we say, Georgios has a bad posture. That's, an attribute that Georgios has. But actually, I think that posture is a snapshot, right? If someone sits down and they have this, this really straight spine, like in that illustration, then, let's examine what that looks like half an hour later. If they keep sitting, the likelihood is that they're not going to be able to maintain that position. Not because they're bad people or they're weak or whatever, but because the body has to move, right? You get fidgety. After half an hour of sitting somewhere, you start wanting to move, and we've learned to kind of, quiet that need. Standing desks. This is a favorite topic. It's my favorite topic, well, not my favorite, but one of my favorite topics because, we also think, oh, this is the new thing. This is going to be the solution, right? This is going to make things better. And it has made things better for reasons we explained earlier, right? That the pressure is less if we're standing. But also our expectations are unrealistic, I think. This is a study that was financed by this new chair that allows you to kind of It's hard to describe without seeing it. I should have put a GIF or something. But anyway, it's a mechanized chair, so that it's higher up, and you can be like this, or like put your foot down, and the chair kind of helps you. So you kind of move, but you're sitting. And the convincer, the study that they did was, well, how uncomfortable are you after 2 hours of sitting? And it shows there that if you're just standing after 2 hours, who stands for 2 hours, right? Who doesn't have to? Then you get uncomfortable. But with this, miraculous chair, you're fine. I'm like, is that really a good outcome? Could we not use that discomfort to say, hey, I need a break. I need to walk and, I don't know, go outside and smell the flowers for 5 minutes and then come back. Or go get a cup of coffee. So, we are engineers. Let's apply some systems thinking here and see what we can find out about the body. You all study this in school. We've split up all the organs and the different kind of small systems of the body in different bigger systems, and they all communicate with each other. And there's a single point of failure, which is, who can guess? What is the single point of failure? The one thing that if it fails, the whole body fails? No. The heart. That's right, the heart. And the heart's job, well, it has many jobs. We can say that it has many jobs, but one of its jobs is to distribute blood everywhere. And with the blood, there is exchange of materials, right? So it delivers, it's a delivery driver, basically. It sends some things to places and then takes some other things from there and takes them in other places. So basically nutrients and waste. Garbage collection, right? But when we sit, the circulation, especially in the extremities, especially in the legs, is reduced because even the heart, which is the strongest muscle, I think, in the body, needs help from the rest of the systems to do its job well. So, and to make things worse, some areas in the body don't actually have a blood supply, right? So the blood never reaches there, so they don't have that capability to have that exchange. And then there's also the fascia, which is a whole area of research that has been that has started relatively recently, and something that we've ignored for many, many years. And fascia is that picture you see on the top right, the connective tissue that's around the big structures that we're used to seeing. So around the organs, around the muscles, around the skin. And it just connects everything, and it has so many different functions that we're only starting to uncover it. And on the image on the right to the bottom, you see what the fascia normally looks like in an active person. It looks like a nice lattice, something that's been woven by this, amazing creator. And then after you've been sitting down consistently, it looks like, someone took that and like a piece of paper that, you crumbled up. And that can create issues. I mean, it's not just a conceptual problem, but that basically those areas that are like this are essentially stuck, and several functions are not being performed very well. So what does movement do? The other side of that, it distributes the synovial fluid to the joints, and the synovial fluid is what lubricates the joints and allows us to, to move with such ease, like we have been doing since we were kids, and then does that exchange that I've talked about because there's no blood supply, right? So it delivers nutrients, takes away waste, takes it to other places. It also stimulates the lymph nodes, our lymph system, to do more cleanup, and that also reduces the inflammation in joints. Now, this is a really important fact that we have known for very long, and we kind of ignore that anything that we do repeatedly, the body tries to make it efficient, even if it's bad for you or just completely useless in the long term. There's no mechanism other than our conscious brain to, for the body to assess that kind of, to make an assessment about that kind of decision. So it just says, well, you keep doing it, so I got to make it easier, right? I got to keep efficient. And if you meet any kind of health practitioner, especially those who work with the body, they're very familiar with those adaptations that happen both in the skeletal-muscular system and the fascia that we talked about just now. And this is a photo from some software that's being sold to help those professionals to understand those imbalances that are being created and then do something about to help the client get an outcome. But you can see that when you have these lines on the person, you can see that the imbalances are quite severe, right? I mean, look at her shoulders, her spine, the head, to the pictures to the right. And to us who are not doing that job, this is completely invisible because, we're normally wearing clothes and no one has drawn these lines on us. We're used to, seeing people as wholes. We don't, try and calculate angles on them and so on. So what I'm trying to say is that we all have these and we just don't see it in each other because we're not trained to do that job. But over time, this is what creates problems, right? This is a very complex system whose balance then sets some components up for failure. And you know this if you worked with microservices, right? The weakest link will fail first, usually. Another interesting aspect to this that is related to the body, not the kind of usual landscape where we're all used to speaking about stress, this sort of mental, how we're coping about things. But stress does contribute to these adaptations. I'm sure everybody's here pretty chill and, doesn't get stressed when there's a release or a bug in production. But what we know is that there are primal reflexes, right? Things that are embedded in our neurology, in the more ancient parts of our neurology that we can't control usually and are very automatic and can happen without our awareness even, right? So in this example, you see something called the startle reflex, which is what happens when there's a threat somewhere, right? So in this example, they're shooting a gun behind the head of this guy, and his immediate reaction is this. So the body is trying to protect the most vital and sensitive organs, the throat, the front, the belly, all of those. Now, why is this important? Because this happens, again, this is a very extreme example, so you can see the pattern, but it happens in smaller quantities anytime there is stress, right? So the muscles are firing in this fashion anytime there's something that you perceive as a threat, like your boss asking why was the website down for 5 minutes yesterday, or the sprint was late. And over time, it also creates an adaptation that looks like this. And I think you don't need a lot of imagination to see that this is actually very similar to what a person looks like after they've been sitting for a long time, right? So I think, personally, I believe there's a correlation between the position of being tired and this adaptation that is a result of stress. All right, so I've thrown a lot at you, so let's do a small recap before we go on. So we see that we have evidence that we're all at high risk of spine, hip, generally joint injuries and degeneration because of our jobs. And it's important to do something about this, both for ourselves and for the next generation. whether that's our kids or people we mentor, that standing puts less pressure on the spine, but holding any position, standing or sitting, for too long creates adaptations that we don't really want to have. And ergonomic furniture reduces but does not eliminate the impact of that. Good posture can exist, but for a limited time only, because we need to be able to move. And sitting and standing still has negative side effects to other systems in the body. And stress does also produce negative adaptations. So movement is required to stay healthy. Okay. So at this point, usually people are, getting a little bit troubled, and they're thinking, and I can see the cogs turning in their heads, and they usually go, "But man, I don't have time to do this." And I get that. I get that. Believe me, I struggle, even with myself. I'm here to speak to you about these subjects, but it's not that I've conquered everything and I'm this perfect soldier that, does everything automatically. I'm trying to train myself to do these things too. But, time is also an illusion, and we also think that we have time, right? That we're still young. We can push the envelope a little further, right? We can solve that technical debt next week because now we have the release. And I wanted to present to you this real case study, real person that I managed to, I know this person through another person and so on, doesn't matter. This is a real thing that happened, right? So the first dot is business as usual, because that's what I call, when we're just going about our businesses, right? We're not worried about this stuff all the time. So she gets a job as a financial analyst. She's doing a good job, so she gets promoted really quickly in 6 months. 9 months later, COVID hits. She has a bad chair. She's working overtime, 12, 15 hours. 8 months later, she has really intense headaches, and that's usually caused when the neck area is, locked up. And back pain, what more common. 2 months later, she gets a new chair, so she reacts quite quickly. Then after 2 more months, she gets more responsibilities. The kind of workplace kind of ignores, or maybe she, I don't know, maybe she wasn't communicating it enough or whatever. But the pain intensifies, right? At this point, she doesn't only have back pain and headaches, but really severe pain. 9 months later, she loses most of her mobility of her neck, so she can't actually turn her head, right? She's almost able to look only straight. And her breathing is restricted because of all the muscles around the rib cage have tightened up and are restricting her range of motion here. And then she does an MRI, and there's osteophytes, which is the bone growth that we saw earlier, right? So that's like one of the worst states for a disc. She asked for sick leave. After 2 months, she doesn't get it. And then 3 months later, she gets another problem which is called carpal tunnel. Some of you may know it. It's when you get a lot of pain here on the forearm, and it's usually on the side that we have the mouse. And she does another MRI, and there's even more osteophytes. And in the current state, and this is maybe at the end of this kind of timeline, it was, I think, 2 years ago, and her current state is she can't actually sit down for any length of time, and she can only work standing for 3 or 4 hours. So this is all to say, well, many things. There's many things to this story. One is that not everybody has a big, loud warning and time to resolve it, right? So sometimes there's no warning. Sometimes when we get the warning, the reaction time that we have is very small, but we don't always know that. And the other thing is that when we get to this stage, we have many less options, and we have to do a lot more effort to recover, and we may not. right? So we have to be proactive. And I think it's generally a big misconception about injuries, right? So if we are thinking in systems and we are thinking that there's a fine balance between different parts of the body that we create over time because of these adaptations that happen because of what we do repeatedly, one of these things being sitting or standing, then some parts will get weaker and those parts are more prone to injury. So it's not, people say, oh, I went to play football, I missed my warm-up that day, and, I tore my ACL. I'm like, no, you had, your body had this, that was your weakest point, and then there was an incident that, drove it past its limits. And there's a kind of theory that, I'm sure will make sense to you guys, the general adaptation syndromes, which says that when there is a stressor in the body, and this applies to anything from, viruses or anything else, the body reacts and then overcompensates, right? It does anything that it can to recover, to go back to its original state. But if that stressor persists for long enough, then the body's resources are depleted and, things get worse. That's when we actually get really sick. So I made these charts just to illustrate that, most of us get activated on the left chart, over there where it says a lot of pain, right? So we have to go through a lot of pain to actually take action. But by that point, the effort that we need to spend to actually recover is very big. And the potential reward for that effort is smaller also, right? So the more we need something, the less yield it usually has. Does that make sense? Yeah, anybody wants to kind of ask anything about this? Okay. And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to be in a position where, surgery or having a lot of pain are my only options. And in these two particular problems, degenerative spine disease or hip, these are the only options that can be offered. Well, sorry, not the only options. These are two of the options that can be offered in terms of surgery. So they go into the spine and they put, they put two screws around the disc to basically create space so that the bones don't rub on each other. That's what you see on the left. By any means, not an ideal surgery because that actually, the person who has this done loses a lot of their mobility in their spine, so they can't move the same. And then it's quite likely that the discs on either side, because they lose mobility, will also degenerate faster. Hip replacements are actually a lot more successful as a generic surgery. The success rates have gone up, and my mother had one 2 years ago. She's now 82, and that's where they basically cut off the bone. This big leg bone here. They cut it. They put a piece of metal in so that it's stable, and then they put a bolt to replace the joint. But again, it's not something that I would like to go through personally, unless I'm also 80 years old, maybe. So this is what I struggle with every day. What is the solution to this? What do we do? Our jobs require us to be in front of the screen, to do the good work that we do. What should we do now so that we're still able to move later? There's no clear answer. I only have some ideas, and I keep working this out for myself. But I have brought some nice catchphrases that hopefully you guys will remember. This is my first one. If you don't use it, you lose it. So, I think it's quite obvious. Anything that has to do with neurology, just because of how neurons work, if we don't exercise that path, it gets pruned. We lose access to it. So, we have to keep active. We have to keep our patterns in order. I hope there's no Rust developers in here, because rest is rust and motion is lotion. This is a saying used by orthopedics and that industry, let's say, to signify the importance of movement. And we actually have a big misconception that resting is recovery. It's not. Sleep has a very important place in our lives, but laying on the couch, that's not rest. Your body continues to suffer. If you've been on the chair all day and then you go, you move to the couch, your body continues to suffer. You have to move for all the reasons we mentioned earlier, right? So remember this: rest is rust, motion is lotion. So here are some kind of simple principles that I've put together to help myself, and maybe you guys will try them out and see if they work for you. So do some sort of warm-up before you sit down, right? Especially now with remote work, which we all think is what we were expecting all these decades and was missing from our lives. And I tend to disagree, because we lose all these excuses to move. But don't, especially if you're working from home, don't get up from your bed and then sit on your chair. Do some sort of movement. It doesn't matter which one. Go for a walk. Do something like this, whatever floats your boat, right? Just get some blood moving around. Then when you get up, do some sort of stretch, right? I don't know, how many of you have like cats or dogs? Okay, but you've all seen cat memes, so you're fine. Okay. So cats and dogs, both of them, when they've been sitting or sleeping or however we describe what they do most of the day, especially our cats. I have 2 cats. They get up and they're like, they really stretch, and you see them bend around. And we even named a lot of yoga poses around these animals, right? So they're doing something right. And this will also, stretch out your fascia, right? It will pull on that fine connective tissue that we saw earlier and restore that lattice instead of it being all tangled up. I don't know if this is a Bollywood exercise or not. Probably not, because I think they only do like a side one, right? But this is the only GIF I could find. Probably need to shoot myself at some point, not with a gun. So joint mobility, this is sort of a known part of exercise that is usually ignored for some reason. I don't know. It's only started appearing in the last few years. So if you search on YouTube now for joint mobility, you will find some videos that are teaching it. But it's the simplest idea of moving your joints, right? So what he's doing is mobilizing his neck joint. Or if you do circles on your wrist, that's mobilizing your wrist joint. This is really, really, really important for us especially, right? I think for everyone, but for us especially. I used to go to many group classes. I won't make a list, but I don't know. I've been through CrossFit. I've been through like gymnastic classes, whatever. The first thing they do is actually run. And, especially in the winter, I would go from my desk, get in a car, cold car, go over there. My ankles and everything felt cold. And then I would just start running and, put pressure on them. So this warms up, sends blood and also distributes the synovial fluid and does all those good things that we saw earlier. So it's the best preparation to do any kind of exercise, even yoga, right? Even in yoga, they don't do this, usually. This is my 4th one. which is that life is life-size without a screen. I found it very interesting that this was one of the early ads of a TV. And if you see, it depicts a concert, right? So you see the actual venue with all the musicians and the singer. And then on the top of that has the TV. So it's the value proposition there is like, oh, there's a real event, there's people somewhere doing something, and you get to watch it from your TV. Now, I know how that can be enticing, but I hope that we also realize that, being at the concert is much, much better. That TV is really second choice. And obviously TVs have gotten very realistic and much better than what you see here. But let's not forget that the real thing is always better. And the screen, I think, is a really important part of our history in tech. And you see here one of the first personal computers, right? Because before personal computers, computers looked like this. What's not in this picture? Chair? Yes, but also what? A screen, right? There's no screens here. People had to walk around to put the inputs into the computer and take the outputs. My God, what a world. Now we've managed to squeeze everything into a screen, and, really small screen. And, it looks like we're accessing the whole world through that. And I know it's convenient for most things, but it actually does some harm also. So we need to be aware of that. And if it was only for our work, maybe it would be okay, but our entertainment is also pushed into a screen, right? The TV, then the cinema. These slides should have been the other way around, so I'll do that. But also, Netflix now. And I mean, even playing video games used to look like that on the top, but now it looks like that on the bottom. Communicating with others, all of those are real activities that we could be doing a lot of the time in real life, but we get to pick to do the digital equivalent because it's so convenient. And even driving, right? So I've read a book called The Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance that says that the car is kind of a screen, right? Because it detaches you from the real world. You have a protective thing around your screen that you look through the world through it. And now even to get your groceries, you get into a car, look through the screen, and drive there, sitting, of course, and then come back. And then there's people who want to glue a screen onto our heads, which will be interesting to see what happens with that. But the point is, let's not make everything in life be through a screen. Let's go back to actually enjoying our life outside of screens. And I think that we, as the technologists, the people who build these things, need to start that movement. We need to say, okay, this is for this purpose, and when it's not that, then it's on the side. And I'm here interacting with you, or I'm out with my friends, or we go and play a sport. And it doesn't have to be competitive. Like, I understand that most of us in this industry don't want to be athletes, and that's all right. We don't have to. But we also have to find a new kind of ideal in terms of our bodies, in terms of our, the way we experience ourselves as physical entities. That can be healthy. So if you found all of this reasonable and important, we're starting a survey called stateofhealth.tech, where we invite people to take the survey, and we can start collecting some data around these habits and some of these side effects and the things that we experience. So I also invite you to come and take the survey, and hopefully we can all raise awareness about the things that we experience, the back pain, the joint generation, all of that, the challenges that we have as in this industry, doing the work that we do. And one of you who signs up today, there will be a raffle, and you'll get a free mobility session with me. So extra incentive. And then if you just want to follow me on LinkedIn, the QR code on the left is there. So we have time for some questions. All right. In your experience, what specialty should we use to treat this type of pain? A physiotherapist, chiropractor, or specialist doctor? All right. This is a rabbit hole. Again, this is my experience, but my experience is that both the health professions and the fitness professions are filled with good people who have, especially in the fitness industry, they have very little idea of what it is to sit down all day. So, most people who are personal trainers and so on have never sat a whole day in their lives, right? This is very different to us. So I think to a certain extent, we have to educate ourselves to educate them about what our personal experience is so that they can help us, right? So I don't think we should all be personal trainers per se, but at least we need to help them understand what our reality is. In terms of getting help, I will also say that the health professions, the chiropractors, the physiotherapists, all of these have developed ideas about the body that don't all agree with, right? So they have abstractions. They have created ideas of how the body works. They have created depictions and so on. And from that, they derive their methods, which is natural. That's what everybody does. But the real issue that I see is that they don't all work, they don't speak to each other, right? It's almost like we do, right? So the React people don't speak to the Angular JS people. They both write front end, they both write UIs, but you don't see them going, well, we cannot do things like this. How do you guys do it? And then, compare notes. Same with, C# and Java. So in that sense, I think it's up to us to, and the result of that is that we don't have good information about what works and for whom at what time, right? So not everything works for someone at some point, basically. But it's up to us to figure out what that thing is, unfortunately. I wish I had a better answer. So my suggestion is, try different things. You will also get, even if you do believe in a particular modality, say osteotherapy or whatever, you're still going to get variance between practitioner. So, just shop around, unfortunately. So that's the one. The other question is, do you notice a difference? I presume that means, do I notice a difference if I apply these concepts? And yes, there's a huge difference. Actually, why don't we all try this, all right? So you guys have been sitting for, over half an hour. So how many of you kind of notice a little bit of discomfort in your body? Okay. So the ones of you that feel comfortable, let's try these two exercises. I'll do this one first because it's easy, and then we'll do one standing up. So just try and move your wrist. So put your finger like this. So grab your finger like this and go with your wrist up and down. All right? All right, so the point is to not do that with your elbow. So don't go like this, because then your wrist doesn't do it. Your wrist has to go up and down. Okay, better. Now, do side to side. There's a lot of clicks. I heard mine. In this context, clicks are good, right? So, all right, so now put it into a circle. So go up, side, down, side, up, side, down, side. And then smooth it out. And then the other way. So first, the corners, so up, side, down, side, and then smooth it out. Okay, shake it out. How does this hand, that wrist that you've been working on, feel relative to the other one? Just shout it out. Happier? Okay. Yeah, it's that. I mean, it's very hard to describe because we're also not used to paying attention to it. But happier. I like that. I have 3 minutes, so I'll show you the other exercise before we leave. Let me see. Do you have a standing desk? I do have a standing desk. The feedback that I get from most people is that they have a standing desk and they actually don't use it. As in, they don't, go up and down very much. I have those days too, and the way that I'm trying to make this better for myself is to become more aware of the feedback I'm getting from my body, right? So, for example, thirst. We've all heard the 2 liters a day thing. Just so you know, that's completely arbitrary. That somehow became popular. I made a LinkedIn post about it somewhere. But it's not based on anything, right? Someone said it and then somehow it was popularized. But the idea is to be more aware of when you are thirsty, because usually we override that. It's like, oh, I'll finish this test, if you're testing and not just pushing code production, and then I'll go, get some water or whatever it is. So it's becoming aware of those signals again, and the most subtle signal, in my opinion, is the need to move, right? When you're in the chair and you just can't find the comfortable position, you just keep moving around. Like, anybody feels that sometimes? Yeah? So I think for me, that's the signal of the body that I need to move. I need to actually get up. Like, there's no position that will satisfy me because I need to move. What can companies do to promote physical well-being for their employees? This is also a rabbit hole. Look, I'm generally of the opinion that we need to take this into our hands. Companies and other people can do things to make it easier for us, but no one can come and do it for us, right? So yes, I do hope your companies have invested in some decent equipment, but it doesn't have to be top of the range, in my opinion, because we need to start. I don't think the point is to have such a good chair that we never get up. The point is to have a chair that makes it okay for you to sit for half an hour, and then get up. And that's up to you. That's all the questions I have over here. Anyone else wants to raise their hand and ask something? Yeah.
Have you ever tried one of those balls instead of a chair?
Yes. The question was, have I ever tried a Swiss ball, one of those big balls to sit on instead of an actual chair? Yes, I have tried it. For me, it was very hard.
Horrible, but I think the point is to make you move.
Yes. You need some good core. So if you do try it, do it in increments. So don't try to sit all day straight away. Like do 10 times and then, 12 minutes, 14 minutes, whatever. But you also need to work on your core a little bit because, you're putting an unstable surface underneath you. And I mean, my personal issue with that is that it distracts me and then I don't feel productive. And I'm like, go back to the chair. So it varies from, people to people. But anyone else? All right. Thank you all for being here again, and I'll be around for any more questions or to just chat. So thanks a lot.